Hello and welcome to SMETV. I'm your host, Angela Vithulkis, bringing you the latest in news and views for the SME community. None of you, our SME community, need reminding of how tough it is right now, or how much is at stake. I know that firsthand. Like you, I'm worried about the future for my business, for my family and my team. That's what SMEs do. They care for more than just themselves. Who cares about us? Well, besides SMETV, well, stay watching to find out. Please remember, by subscribing to our YouTube channel, you're showing support not just for us, but for all SMEs. And we encourage you to comment and share SMETV. Now, joining us today from Canberra, and it's cold and 13 there, is Kate Carnell, the Australian Small Business and Family Ombudsman, a small business owner herself in a previous life. And guess what? She's got a recovery plan. Welcome, Kate.
Lovely to see you again, Angela. And it's a pity we're not face-to-face, but then that's the world we live in.
And as you said just before when we were off air, you said normally we would do this face-to-face in Sydney, hopefully. And in between you coming to Sydney is all the incidental businesses that you would have supported along the way getting here that are now missing out on all that extra business or trade.
Look, absolutely. Still a lot of businesses, people are working from home. That means the coffee that they would have got, at the coffee shop downstairs, all of those things are gone, and it's really hurting businesses. And of course, that's without talking about the absolute challenge for businesses in Melbourne and the surrounding areas that are in level 4. Your heart goes out to them, doesn't it? Absolutely.
To all our Victorian SME community, we're trying to constantly remind them that we are here for them to support them, but we know that there's very little that we can do except to continue in whatever way we were doing business with them, and hoping that we all come out the other side, probably in a new way though, Kate.
That's true, but we've got a list now in my office of Melbourne-based businesses that are selling online, and we're all making a big effort to ensure that as much as we can, we're buying from businesses that are in level 4 shutdown. I suppose we could all do that.
It's nice to walk the talk.
It is.
Now, Kate, specifically what I wanted to talk to you today was about the COVID-19 recovery plan that your office has put out and the recommendations around it. There are 7 key areas, and then including the addition of the Act, the Small and Family Business Act. We obviously can't cover all those areas today, and we're only going to cover a few, but I just want to mention what they all are. So you're looking at areas like taxation, having a small business friendly environment, access to justice, turnaround and insolvency, industrial relations, procurement, access to a skilled workforce. That's the key areas. I want to talk to you about 3 of the areas that I think are really relevant right now to a lot of the themes we're running on SMETV, and also touch very briefly on you have this set of recommendations, but then you're also saying we need the Small and Family Business Act to officially be able to legislate these changes should they happen.
Yes, that's right. And so, look, it all goes together. It's fundamentally about saying it should be easier to run your business, employ people, and make sure things happen, like you get paid in 30 days or less. So just basic stuff, but having legislation and policy to back those things up and to get rid of unnecessary legislation and regulation.
So I'm thinking that this is finally a silver lining to come out of COVID, because a lot of these items and your recommendations in these key areas, they're things that they're sensible. They're things that the small business community should have had and need to prosper and to thrive and move forward. So maybe the silver lining is that this has kind of all pushed it together and given you the opportunity in your office to really stand up and say, hey, if we do all these things now, fast track it, we're actually going to be doing something better for the economy moving forward.
Absolutely. All of a sudden, SMEs and our future, our capacity to employ and to grow is front and centre for governments at all levels.
Finally. And you've come up with the key recommendation, which is to have an act, so a tool to enact it and make it legislation. I think that's been missing a lot from any kind of advocacy.
That's absolutely true. The problem we've got is that business in government legislation is one thing. It's BHP or it's the corner store. And fundamentally, they're not the same entity. We know
No.
that. And we've got to understand that small businesses are different from big businesses, and they need different things and different legislation and regulation.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right?
No, they're just they're different entities. What's right for BHP isn't right for small businesses with 5 employees. It's pretty self-evident, really.
Yeah, like we said, common sense, and finally the silver lining. Okay, the three key areas that were of great interest to us and our viewers. Number one, and you're not going to be surprised of me favouring this one, access to justice.
Yeah.
The main thing, Kate, that I have read the report or the plan a few times now, and one of the key things I loved, apart from the flow, is the fact that you highlight the status quo for each key area. You highlight and explain what's going on right now,
Yep.
and then the recommendation about how to fix it. So
Yes.
access to justice, you're talking about to create a federal small business claims tribunal to provide triage.
Yep. Look, what we're trying to do is say, look, one thing we know is that the current legal system is not small business, or for that matter, people friendly. Even if you owed $100,000, even if you were owed $100,000 and you wanted to get that back in the court system, it's likely to cost you more than the $100,000.
It's not a business case yet.
It's not a business case. It takes too long and it costs too much. We've got to have access to a justice system that works for small businesses. Now, organisations like mine, the state small business commissioners have a mediation capacity. That's great when both sides are acting in good faith. But when they're not, when big business says, no, we're not talking, there is nowhere to go at this stage. And so what we're suggesting is a federal small business claim tribunal that is not about lawyers, is about almost an arbitration type approach where a decision can be taken quickly, and so small businesses can get access to justice in a quick, timely and efficient way. And my office can provide free support for small businesses to help them work through that hopefully very simple system. So we can give them a triage approach on the way in so it can happen quickly. It's very important, Angela, because as you know, the current system doesn't work for anybody.
It's quite broken.
Well, if you don't have deep pockets and long timelines, whoever you are, it doesn't work.
Justice, it feels like it's the wrong word to put into that framework, because you can't get justice if it's going to take a long time and cost you a lot of money, and then at the end of the day you lose anyway, and it has nothing to do with justice. It can be just a black and white loophole in something. So being able to have the actual issue exposed in a triage setting and have it looked at from an independent authority. Kate, what surprised me, I think, is you actually want to refer to independent binding arbitration.
Yes.
I think this is a good thing, but I'm surprised that you've been able to bring this up, because if I'm right, the building tribunal, the builders, they already have that.
Yes, they do. It exists in certain very small areas, but not generally. And we believe this is the only sensible way to go. We do a lot of mediations in my office for small businesses with problems with large businesses usually, or with government entities. But it only works when the big entity wants a solution. If they don't...
They don't have to.
They don't have to. So
they can go through the
say, well,
motions of meeting in your office, pretending to listen, and I'm not saying that they do, this is a generalisation, and they can go, yeah, we've ticked that box, walk away, and still be where they were at the beginning of the conversation, because they can. But by you putting forward a recommendation to have independent binding arbitration, not only is that something that would happen in a timely manner, not only would we have access to justice, but there's also going to be a result that both parties have to respect.
That's the point, Angela. It's about saying we've got somewhere to go if mediation doesn't work. In other words, both parties aren't operating, in our view, in good faith.
Yep.
We've got somewhere to go that's not the court system. Currently, it's only the court system. And that's simply not
it's not
enough.
reinventing the wheel, Kate. It already exists.
it does already exist, and we can really make this work. And it also works in different parts of the world as well. So we're not unique, but and we've got trained arbiters. They already exist in Australia. There are ways to make this happen.
Now, you also make mention of unfair contract terms to automatically voiding contracts up to 10 million. Tell us about that.
Unfair contract term legislation was passed in 2017, which was a huge step forward for small businesses. Problems with it are that the sort of contracts that can be covered are really quite small. You know, $300,000 on a single contract or $1 million for a multi-year contract. Now, there's lots of contracts that are bigger than that, and so we're suggesting that it should cover contracts up to $10 million. That the definition of small business should be the ATO definition, which is business with a turnover under 10 million, and that clauses that are deemed unfair are ruled null and void, and you don't have to go to court to prove that.
Right, and that's,
right at the moment,
again, access to justice because you're getting rid of legal fees that are going to topple you anyway.
We found unfair contract term legislation has been hugely beneficial in getting rid of obvious unfair terms in contracts, like those great clauses that used to be in your bank contract that said we can change anything at any time that we like without your approval, so there. Or they didn't have to so there. But a lot of insurance contracts have got those sort of catch-all clauses, which are obviously unfair. You know, or we will roll over this contract every 12 months. We won't give you any notice of that.
That's right. We won't tell you. It'll just happen.
It'll just happen. So you've got to be clever enough to know what's going to happen and tell us 3 months before, otherwise just going to roll over and you're up for another 12 months. Those sort of clauses are obviously unfair and they've simply got to go.
So what you're saying is that they should be automatically void, even if someone's got it in there and you sign for it, it's irrelevant.
And you don't have to go to court to prove it.
Right.
And they are actually illegal. So there can be penalties around large entities that use unfair contract terms. So there's a stick as well.
Good, because without consequence, we don't learn.
No, it's true.
Industrial relations, Kate, this is a huge thing, and it's not just for small business. It's been a massive bone of contention for big business as well, particularly in the last 2 years where we've had huge cases of wage theft and underpayments. You're talking about introducing a new small business award.
That's right. What we're saying is that the current system is far too complex. 960 sections, 250,000 words in the FairWork Act. Then we have 122 awards that sit underneath that, many of them with 20,000 plus words and sections. Many awards like retail hospitality will have, more than 20 pay points, different break requirements, different terms and conditions. I mean, it's just an extraordinarily big mess. By the way, Angela, the unions are still saying that it's not complex, but it's so complex that even the ABC, who I don't believe meant to pay their casuals wrongly, but did, or Woolworths or Liza and Walter Hall research entity, great operation, got it wrong. We're talking about big entities that I don't believe are doing the wrong thing or trying to do the wrong thing, but it's complex. So how can small business manage in this space?
That's right. But you also mention, and I think it's an excellent recommendation, is that we need to be able to rely on advice from the authorities, which has also been a major issue. If Fair Work don't know the answer to something, how can then everyone be compliant?
Well, it's almost impossible. So if you ring the Fair Work Ombudsman and say, here's my problem, can you give me some advice? They should give it to you and stand by it.
That's
on
right.
the basis you gave them the right information. At the moment, that doesn't happen. At the moment, they're very reticent to give advice at all and will say, and then they have the bit at the bottom that says, and by the way, you really can't rely on this.
And this is the issue, right? So small business owners can't employ an entire HR department or have an HR lawyer on hand. They're going straight to the source and they're still not being able to get the right advice. And then 6 months or 6 years later, they can find themselves in the middle of an underpayment scandal and then be subject to penalties as well.
Look, it's absolutely true, Angela. One of the funny things, a couple of years ago, the FairWork Ombudsman did a bit of a review of what was happening in small business, and they found lots of small businesses were paying above award in an attempt not to end up, in trouble for paying below the award in certain circumstances. Unfortunately, it doesn't cover you. You can do that.
Even that's not enough.
No, because if you paid one person wrongly on a Sunday, the fact you'd paid everybody else more doesn't fix that. So you're still on the wrong time.
And then the key one that you've that stands out to me, or two actually, that ReguTech is going to be a huge part of the solution and help everyone be compliant. We need to invest in that.
Yeah, if we've got these incredibly complex legislation, regulations, awards, all sorts of other stuff,
layer upon layer upon layer.
That's absolutely true. We've got technology that can address that now. Technology that sits on top of regulation and can data mine the stuff that you actually need. So I can put in at my cafe, I can say, Joe Blogs, works front of house. Here's his hours for the week.
Chef does split shift, etc., etc.
That's it. So the technology sits on top of the regulation and gives you the answer. And what we've said in that is this is good, but if you use these approved tech solutions, that should save you, even if there's a mistake going forward, even if for some reason the piece of software got something wrong, it shouldn't be your fault.
And
so there's a safe
harbour. The interesting thing to come out of being in the middle of COVID is that we've had that temporary change, which you're recommending turns to something more permanent, is where employees have been allowed to move between awards and classifications. So we all know that in a small business, particularly you might have someone employed in one field and they should be allowed to do other work in other areas if everyone's agreeable to it.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't mean that they have to change the whole compliance software behind it.
And that's particularly important at the moment, as we know, but going forward as well. It's going to be a long time before small businesses have the revenue that they used to have. So keeping your staff on the books is going to mean a level of flexibility we haven't seen before. When JobKeeper goes, there's no way a lot of businesses are going to be able to pay their full-time employees at full-time rates. They're just not going to be able to. So you're going to have the flexibility to be able to adjust hours, adjust the roles that people are playing in the organisation. And, I have to say, you should always be able to do that, but it's going to be a long time before businesses are going to be able to survive without that sort of
it seems like a no-brainer, Kate, that relationship between the employer and the employee in terms of the small business environment, where generally that's what they're already doing. It seems like a no-brainer to make that official so that no one gets into trouble for it when all they're trying to do is just get a job done and keep the door open.
We had a case not so long ago where a student was employed in a supermarket, and if they'd been paid exactly properly, they would have ended up with 5 different pay rates in a week, fundamentally because they were doing different jobs depending on what was necessary when they got in the afternoon. Actually they were at uni, I think, but anyway, whatever. So 5 different pay rates in 1 week is what the actual award would have required. Who can manage that? Nobody.
I don't want to manage that.
No, nor do I. And you're going to get it wrong. So if we want people to employ, if we want small business to keep their staff on, we've got to make it flexible enough to work for both the employee, because they don't want to be unemployed. They want to stay, employed, and they want their employer, the small business person, not to go broke.
And it's a simple situation where they've got the relationship, they know what's going on, and all this is recommending is that it becomes an official situation so that the employer doesn't get into trouble for something that's not even a problem to start with.
That's absolutely true. We also think there should be a new category which is called permaflexi, which is where you can make a part-time, where you can make it casual permanent, but you can still have the flexibility to change shifts. And as you know, with a permanent part-time person, you can't change their shifts.
No.
You can't say, Jenny, can you come in tomorrow and do this extra shift, or because somebody's away? That doesn't work for permanent part-timers at all.
And as small business owner, I can't comprehend that, Kate.
No, because it's really stupid. Jenny doesn't have to come in if she doesn't want to, but she might want to.
That's right. She might want to. She might want to. That's what I don't understand. It doesn't account for the relationship in the business. I wanted to cover turnaround and insolvency, but I can't because we've run out of time.
Next time.
So we're going to include it in the written content. And you're absolutely right, next time, because there are a lot of key areas that you're making recommendations on that will change the lives of small business, and for that we appreciate it. To all our viewers and watchers out there, remember, press subscribe. You need to subscribe to SMETV so you can all get it and find out all the information that comes out. To the SMEA Association, thank you so much for your support for making SMETV happen. To Piedmont Studio for your great production, we love you, thank you. To anyone out there who has any questions, comments, tips or stories, reach out to me directly. news@smea.org.au. And thank you very much to Kate Carnell, who has made some time for us and works and lives time for small business. Thank you, Kate.
Thanks, Angela.